It's such an honor to chat with you again. You're one of the most beloved people in our space. Everybody that meets you and comes across your content just can't say enough great things about you. And I'm going to jump to the very end of the episode that I should be asking you this question. When does the movie come out?
That's the big question, right? The movie comes out early 2026. I know it's been a long time coming. There's a lot of people excited about it, but it has really turned into an epic since we spoke last, Casey. I've literally been all over the planet. We filmed all over Australia, all over Canada. We did 60 interviews. We have over 400 hours worth of footage. And it really got bigger than I anticipated when we first started, but I'm thankful it has. We're doing the main documentary, but we're also doing a series because we have so many stories of healing. So yeah, and we're done now. We just filmed Dr. Sean Baker. He was our final interview number 60, appropriately so, ending with Dr. Baker, who's started Carnivore for so many people. But we finished filming with him about 2 months ago, and we're in post-production. We're editing everything together. And yeah, the goal is to finish it up at the end of this year and have it live to the world and accessible to as many people as possible early next year.
That's amazing. I told you this last time. I am no good on things like TikTok and Instagram because I can't make things brief. Everything I do is like way too long. Like by the time this episode drops, we're dropping a few special episodes that are celebrating our 5th-year anniversary of doing this podcast. And I'm including clips from all the different years. And it's just hours long. Like I can't trim it down to just like
Right.
get to the point. It's so difficult. It must have been really, really difficult to not only accumulate so many stories, but at the same time, like more people are finding carnivore. So even more people are coming out of the woodwork with their own stories. I don't know how you decided to just cut it off and say, like, we're done at this point.
I don't either. It was so difficult because a story would come up and it's like, there's no way we can finish the documentary and not include that story as well. The saving grace for us was really the decision that this is so much bigger than a documentary. This thing's going to end up being 9 hours long and no one's going to want to watch it if we just keep going this way. And the decision to do the series, which I'm almost more excited for, Casey, the series afterwards. We're going to have an episode for every major health issue. So if you have a loved one going through depression or type 2 diabetes, we'll have a whole episode with an expert and individual stories on that topic. So you can just send them right to what they're interested in. But that's really what has helped us. But there's still a couple stories where I'm like, I wish we would have had that for the main documentary also, but we'd never get it done. And the other thing I'll just say real quick, some people have been like, why is this taking so long? It really hasn't been that long considering the premise of the film from day one has been, let's follow individuals over the course of 1 year. And we did that with Bill Knott. We went there day one and we had to wait a whole year. I've only been carnivore a little over 2 years. So it's like, it hasn't been that long considering we followed several individuals over the course of a year. But the real problem for us, the reason it took long was also just the funding. Like we didn't have, here's a couple $100,000 to go buy a cinema approved camera and for you to go film all over the world. We had none of that. So we did a 24-hour live stream. We raised some money. We went and filmed Bill Knott. We ran out of money. And then we had to like scratch and fight and claw for every penny to keep going. So we would do a live stream or we would do a meetup and we would raise a little bit more money. And then so it's a lot of stopping and starting, but we're on the home stretch now. I'm so excited to be on to the next chapter. I was just talking to the editor yesterday and can't wait for people to see the whole story.
It's going to be amazing. Yeah, you just published a 3-minute long, I guess trailer isn't the right word, but just kind of like a teaser with all the stories. And it was so great to see so many people that we've been able to host on our podcast as well, including Lee Kopus, who we just barely talked to, and thinking like he's going to be featured in the movie, but also knowing that there's such a much longer story that needs to be told about his story, about having his entire colon removed and what that taught him about undigested plant materials, making it straight out of his digestive system is absolutely fascinating. So we'll be looking forward to those complete stories as well. I think that's a huge part of what you're doing.
Yeah, Lee's story is incredible, as you mentioned. The thing that was remarkable with him too was all of the suffering that man has been through. And one of the biggest issues on his list was mental health, depression, which was a common theme and thread throughout the whole documentary, is people's mental health improving when they return to a proper human diet. But yeah, his story is huge in the documentary, but in the series I mentioned too, not only are we hoping to do individual health episodes, like an episode all about cancer, episode all about depression, but also individual episodes about the individuals. So you really loved Lee in the main documentary. You saw a little bit of his story. Well, now here's a whole episode on Lee. Here's a whole episode on Dr. Barry. Here's a whole episode on Dr. Baker. So that's the long-term goal.
That's going to be amazing. If I time travel back very early into your carnivore journey, you said you've only been at this for over 2 years. That's a little boggling to think about, but it's true. If I go back to that journey and, I believe it was day 67 or something when you said, hey, we're going to make a documentary. If I told you the trials, the tribulations, the money, the travel, if I told you everything you would have to go through to get to this point, do you think you would still have made a documentary?
100%. It's my calling, it's my passion, it's my purpose in life is doing this now. I can't see anything else I would rather do. But it's a great question because I had no idea what I was getting into on day 67 when I announced it. In my head, I had seen a documentary years ago called Fathead. It was on Netflix. It was about the ketogenic diet. And I believe the guy, his name's Tom Naughton. He was like a stand-up comedian, but he filmed it on an old handheld camcorder. And in my brain, when I announced this, I'm like, I don't know, we'll film it on the phone. Like, it's the stories that matter, right? Like, it was just so simple in my head, and it's gone to something so much larger. But I'm thankful it did because we want to reach millions of people with this, and to do that, you got to use the good quality cameras. You got to really tell this. We only get one shot, so I am, but it's surreal. It is really surreal that this is even happening. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in Tennessee at Low Carb for Better Health, and Dr. Barry came up to me and said, hey, I want to get my picture taken with you. I'm like, he's like a hero of mine. And now he's like in the documentary and I'm chatting with him. He's sending me text messages. It's all very surreal and unbelievable.
That's amazing. Fathead, was that 2009-ish that came out?
That sounds about right. Yeah, I think so.
I remember, I wish I could time travel back into my brain when I first watched it. I can't remember when I first watched it, but that was very instrumental in my journey as well. Like I'd never seen anything like that or heard anything like that, that he would take on that kind of fast food project, but rather than, just eat fast food, he would just eat the meat. If I recall that story right, that was the first time, he had those animations that would explain like Ansel Keys and the diet heart hypothesis. And a lot of those pictures I use for all kinds of different material that I use. So it's interesting, like going back that far, I don't recall watching anything like that. That was a good one.
I'm with you. That was the same for me. I don't even know, like, I heard of Atkins before then, but I never really knew about keto. And I certainly didn't know about the science of it. And after watching that, I was like, this guy's just dropping truth bombs. This makes sense. And it was the first thing that I had ever tried. I tried keto after watching that documentary, and it really helped me with my mental health. It was the only thing that had helped me with my mental health. And I was on medication for 10, 15 years, SSRIs, antidepressants. So I was like, this is remarkable. And long story short, I don't know that I ever would have started carnivore without that introduction to keto. Because if I was going from standard American diet to carnivore, I could never have wrapped my brain around it. But when I heard about carnivore, I'm like, this is just strict keto. I understand the science of keto. Like this should work. But yeah, that was hugely instrumental for me. And honestly, probably a part of the reason I'm doing the documentary, because that was so powerful for me. I'm like, we need something like this on carnivore. There's so many keto docs out there now since Fathead. Nothing really when I first started doing this on carnivore at all at that point.
Yeah, for sure. One of my favorite things one of our guests has told me is like, if you don't think a carnivore diet is weird, I think you're weird. Like the first time you hear about it, like my reaction was turning off the Sean Baker episode of Joe Rogan halfway through. And I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I got to turn this off. But we go through different trials and tribulations that bring us here. I was telling somebody recently, like you don't find a ton of people that do carnivore just for the hell of it. Like, this sounds fun, I'm just going to do this and never eat some of these other things. There seems to be some level of confusion or suffering or something that people have gone through. And you've definitely, gone into your, personal journey of health and have mentioned several things already. But I do want to go back and if you don't mind, tell some of the listeners what things you were dealing with in your own health. And also to say, like, you're what, 44, 45 now? Like pretty young, you were dealing with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm 45 now, and in my 30s, I was on statins for 8 years. Big regret of mine. We could talk more about that, but I was 100 pounds heavier than I am right now, and I had horrible depression. That was my worst issue, depression and anxiety for 10 or 15 years. I finally went in for help. They put me on antidepressants, SSRIs, and they never really helped me. I would go on a course of those, and then they would up the dosage, they would change the dosage, and it never helped me. I felt like a zombie walking around. I had arthritis in my foot and in my back. I had IBS. I had multiple kidney stones. They removed my gallbladder. My appendix burst on the operating room table. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. This was most of this was in my 30s. Like I was just a mess. So many health issues. The biggest thing for me was about 10 years ago, I was at home and I went to stand up and I got dizzy, confused. My lip was drooping. I couldn't tell my wife what was going on, and she called 911, and I suffered a TIA mini stroke. And I spent 5 days at the stroke unit in the hospital, and they're like, what is wrong with this dude? He's got so many health issues. He's on all this medication in his 30s. They tested my heart and they diagnosed me with congestive heart failure. My ejection fraction was 44, which just means my heart can't keep up with the needs of my body. It's also a very scary diagnosis when you hear congestive heart failure. I'm like, what is that? Am I dead? Like, what does that even mean? And all of those issues in my 30s and then into my early 40s, yeah, they just mounted up one on top of the other. And I was depressed and I was fatigued and I had brain fog and memory loss. And I was just a shadow of the human being I am today.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you to take us into kind of a day in the life of what that used to look like for you, and you've kind of done that pretty well. One thing that we really flew by last time we chatted, something you just mentioned, the digestive issues, the IB, you said IBS, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us that one specifically? I think that one's really underrated and way prevalent in the population. Like it seems like everybody has something like that. Can you tell us like that one in particular, what that was like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So the IBS it started out a little bit more mild. My stomach just always felt heavy and bloated, issues with gas. And then it turned into pain. Like I was just eating and my stomach would always hurt. There was always this heaviness. And I went to the doctor. They put me on the low FODMAP diet. I followed it religiously. I still had these issues. I still had pain and heaviness and um, problems in the bathroom, stuff like that. And it went on for years and years. Stomach just always hurt. And I get people that will tell me now, Kerry, the only reason you healed on carnivore is because you got rid of all that junk food. And I strongly argue that because for well over a year, but for at least a year before I started carnivore, I did a strict keto plant-based diet and vegetables, salad for lunch, salad for dinner. I'd have a little bit of like low-fat protein, like chicken or something, because right, red meat's going to clog my arteries, give me a heart attack. That's what I thought back then. But I was eating so clean for almost a year and I still had the IBS. It was one of the big epiphanies for me on carnivore. One day, a couple of weeks into carnivore, I was like, I told my wife, I said, I don't feel my stomach anymore. Like there's always been this heaviness, there's something here. And it feels like there's nothing there anymore. And then I got kind of mad because I'm like, that's probably the default state. Like it should have always felt like that, like nothing, like it's just there. There's just air there. And then I started realizing, you know what? I feel like this whole IBS thing, it's just, it's the standard American diet. It's not eating the proper human diet. We get an upset stomach and then we label it with this IBS and there's nothing like, the advice they gave me was change your diet, do this low FODMAP diet, try eat something else, but there was never a solution for it. But it was 100% the foods I was eating. And for me, and I believe many other people, I've interviewed so many now, Dr. Hampton being one, he was vegetarian, eating vegetables, still had IBS. So for a lot of people, believe it or not, people don't like to talk about this stuff, but vegetables can be a big part of the problem. Fiber can be a big part of the problem as well. So